The Secrets of Technology is brought to you by the StarQuest Production Network and is made possible by our many generous patrons. If you'd like to support the podcast, please visit sqpn.com/give. You're listening to The Secrets of Technology. Hi, I'm Dom Bettinelli, and you're listening to The Secrets of Technology, where we discuss the technology news that's important to you from a uniquely Catholic point of view. And joining me today on the panel are, to my left, in person, Pat Scott. Hi, Pat.
Hello there.
And across the interwebs, all the way in Montana, Father Corey Stika. Hi, Father Corey.
How's it going? I'm not in the same room, unlike those two.
I know. Someday we will record in the same room. Yes, Pat is my mother-in-law, and she's come to visit her children and grandchildren, and so we've had the pleasure of having her here, and we figure we better have her on at least one podcast while she's here, and so
take advantage of not having the Skype lag.
Yes, exactly. So let's get into today's news. There's so much news at this time of year, so there's a lot to talk about. First, let me talk about my new phone. Yes, I had mentioned before that I was getting a new phone, so I have the new iPhone 11 Pro Max.
So you got everything but gold plating? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, and it doubles as a surfboard. This thing is huge. If there's flooding, I'm getting on top of it and sailing away along with my whole family. I mean, it's a big phone. But it's my first phone in 2 years. I had the iPhone 10 before, and I've upgraded. So, I skipped a year on the upgrade. This is an amazing phone. I love all of the bits and bobs, still finding out stuff about it. I love the photography. The camera is amazing, and love the wide angle. That's something I was really looking forward to. When you have a big Catholic family like I do, or I think it's a medium Catholic family, but some people think it's big. Getting all 5 kids plus the adults into one shot, that can be tricky. So it's been nice getting that going. So a couple of things I wanted to mention though when you're upgrading. Whether you're upgrading to a new phone or upgrading your iOS, if you're getting a new phone and you're switching from your carrier's upgrade plan, like I have AT&T, and for years I've always bought my phones from AT&T. If you're switching to an Apple upgrade plan using Apple's upgrades or bringing your own phone, it took me forever to figure out how do I activate my new phone. Like I got the box, got all the things set up, and now it's activate your phone. I'm like, well, how do I get my number from the old phone to the new phone? How do I transfer the service? I couldn't find it anywhere. Turns out you take out the SIM card and you move it to the new phone. Yeah. Simple as that.
This is like every other phone out there. I hate to tell you.
Well, I just assumed it was a complicated procedure. I mean, it used to be really complicated. I'd never done this. Technically, it also has an eSIM, and if I'd wanted to, I could have called AT&T and put myself through that torture so that they would activate the eSIM with my old number, and that would leave the SIM slot free if I was the sort of person who traveled a lot and needed to put in, local SIMs. I don't travel a lot, so I'm happy with the way it is. Another tip: unpair your Apple Watch from your phone, and then pair it again afterward. Otherwise, I ended up with all kinds of messiness. I had to pair my watch 3 times before it would actually correctly work with my phone. One thing, this is true for everyone who upgrades from one level of iOS to another, from one integer to the next. You have to go back in and turn Wi-Fi calling back on. So you go into settings, phone, and Wi-Fi calling. I have terrible AT&T service in my house. I get 1 bar, so I use Wi-Fi calling. But you have to remember to turn it back on, and then and that's it. But I have heard about some iOS 13 bugs, like the new operating system. Lots of talk about it.
They did bring out 13.1 a week later. Matter of fact, I purposely waited because I don't remember if it was you, Dom, or someone else that mentioned that there were issues with iOS 13, iPad OS. Of course, I have an iPad,
right?
But so I purposely turned off the auto update on my iPad so that it wouldn't go to iOS 13 on me until
unnecessary.
13.1 came out.
Yeah, actually, iPad OS came out at the same time as 13.1 for the phone. So you weren't in danger of getting 13.0 on your iPad.
Yeah, because 13.1.
Yes.
Right.
There were some issues right up front with what was there? Something about there was some way to get into your contacts, some tricky way to get into your contacts through Siri. Didn't activate anything. Accidentally, someone was fiddling with your phone. Some obscure bug to get into your contacts, and they fixed that. There's other people have talked about bugginess. I haven't run into it, but frankly, there's always bugginess in a brand new operating system upgrade. So
Now, Dom, do you do the iCloud? So a lot of your data and stuff, just as soon as you brought up the new phone and logged in, you just zipped right over?
Well, as soon as is a bit of a misnomer. I mean, yes, it all started downloading again. So there's supposed to be a thing where nowadays you can, if you have a fairly new phone that you're upgrading from, you can actually hold your phone near the new phone, and it will transfer everything locally. It didn't work for some reason on mine, and so then it had to download everything from the cloud, which takes forever.
See, I've done that. I did that in Android when I went from my previous phone to the Pixel that I've been using now for 3 years, and it was that easy where I just went click. Yeah. Okay, we see it.
Yeah, it should have happened that way for me, and it didn't. And because as I recall, it's correctly because I have way too many apps, as everyone points out to me.
Yeah.
But it took forever for it to download.
Right. I do have one rant, though, about upgrading iOS, and I mentioned this to Dom before, iPad OS. Now they call it iPad OS versus just iOS.
Yes.
But so last night, I saw that the 13.1 update was available for my iPad, which actually surprised me because this is a 5 or 6 year old Air 4. I can't even remember what iPad it is, but I've had it for 5 or 6 years. They're still updating it. But anyways, I hit the download update. I'm thinking that means it's going to download and update.
Yes.
No, it just downloaded it. It was until just now when I turned on my iPad and went, what do you mean you're saying install now? Apple, when I say to download the update, install it.
Right. It's not like on a PC, a desktop computer, where those are two separate functions. Just if I say download the update, I'm gonna want you to install it too.
Yeah.
I don't want you to
if
just
I wanted to do
around.
if I wanted to do some kind of corporate thing where I'm installing lots and lots of iPads and I know there's an offline way to do it, I'm going to go to the Apple website and get that offline way to do it.
Yeah.
If I'm just doing it on my iPad, download it.
Right. So, Pat, how's your upgrading been? Have you done the upgrades while you're away from home?
I did the upgrade right. I think the morning that it came out, and it went fine. I found a little lag in the beginning on a couple of things that I was doing, but then closing the app, reopening it, and then I haven't had any problems since then.
I think a lot of times a lot of caches need to get rebuilt. It's the OS will be moving things around for a while afterwards, so that's often happens. I think with it, you got to wait a day or two before things settle down, and that's pretty much true for any computing device, frankly, these days.
Yeah, exactly.
All right, so I'm sure there'll be more to talk about this developing news about iOS and some bugs. Some people are saying it's a buggier upgrade than before, but I don't know if that's necessarily true. That'll all shake out soon. So let's move on to the first of our regular segments, though. There was this article in the Atlantic magazine, and it was headlined provocatively, "I won't buy my teenagers smartphones." And it's this mom writing who writes that, they are an all-American family. Her husband is a naval officer, and her kids, go to regular high school, and they watch, Parks and Rec and The Office, and so on and so forth. They play sports. They're just normal all-American family. But they're her teenage boys. Let's see. She has a 14-year-old who just started high school, and a brother who's 13, I guess, is his brother. They don't have smartphones of their own. Now they have tablets in the house, probably iPads or something like that. They use game consoles, they watch TV, but they don't have smartphones. And she talks about why they have decided not to. And I want to quote from the article here. She mentions this study, a 25-year study of the differences between. I think that's what this is. Oh no, sorry. It's a book. Sorry. This is a study in a book she mentions. She mentions a book by this author Richard Louv called "Last Child in the Woods," and he says. Louv asserts that children suffer from nature deficit disorder when they don't spend enough time under the sky among other living creatures. Already in the habit of limiting our kids' screen time, it was natural to delay buying them electronics. We relented with the purchase of tablets, mainly for use during our frequent trips to visit faraway family, but we never graduated to smaller and more portable devices. We wanted our children to spend their time playing outside and reading books and talking with us, so we never bought them phones. And it's an interesting article because I think a lot of families struggle with this question. When or if we buy phones for our kids? Often it's about convenience, so they can call us, or safety, in case they get into a dangerous situation. But there are other things that come up in this, socialization and other stuff. What do you think about this? I mean, it's a very different world from when we were kids. Father Corey, you're a few years younger than I am. But I think still it was different when you were young.
Oh, very much so. Very much so. I mean, I remember we had computers, we had game systems. We didn't have tablets, but you could really argue that the iPad is kind of the modern day version of the home computer.
Right.
And there were times when Mom said, turn that thing off and go outside.
Or turn off the TV, MTV or whatnot.
Yeah, or TV. Yeah, we had cable and everything. So I actually agree with the premise of the article. And frankly, I would say, if the concern is about safety, if the concern is about convenience for being able to get a hold of the kid or the kid being able to call home, I know this sounds so radically uncool. Get an old style flip phone. You can still get them. And generally the cell companies will give them away.
Right.
I mean, you won't even add to a contract. It's just here, we don't want it. You could use it,
Yeah, exactly.
But I mean, because then that does allow them to keep in touch with family, and they can text and they can make calls and all that and keep their contacts and take pictures, but they don't have the apps. And I think that's the big concern is how many times do we see people in public places, even when we're with friends and we're all looking down at our phones.
Right. Well, I've seen debate back and forth. Often people are on their phones doing social things like looking up a restaurant to go to, or they're in a museum and wanting to find out more about a painting, and so but your point is valid. I think that getting kids habituated into staring at the devices and talking to other people who are sometimes in the same room through a screen is maybe a little weird. Pat, what do you think of this? The article here.
Just remembering when you said talking about a screen, I remember back in the days of just early PCs, Stephen and I would sit there and email back and forth to each other on the other side of the table. It was very convenient. But, I gave my kids pagers in order to be able to get them to come home at a certain time. So the importance of being able to hold of a child to tell them there was a doctor appointment or something like that, or to pick them up, or something has been canceled, I need to go pick them up. Those are all very valid. I think as a family, you can really emphasize the outdoor and the reading and a lot of other things and limit the use of a smart device by saying maybe, hey, hand them a common phone as you walk out the door.
Right.
But not necessarily say they can't use a phone or they can't use something that's got text on it. I think there's some, there's extremes, and I'm kind of down the middle. I think you need to look at making sure your kids have the right values of being outdoors and playing and reading and all those things. But you still have to look at the realities of sometimes you need to get a hold of them.
Right. I agree. So here's my situation, and I've talked about this on my other podcast that I do with my wife, Melanie, called Raising the Bets. We've talked about we've encountered the issue of my 13-year-old is starting to be out and doing, extracurricular sort of things. We homeschool, but she's starting to be out and about doing stuff. And do we get her a phone? And so far we haven't. What we have so far is we've had a bunch of iPads, some old iPads that we've kept around. And we have some old phones that are that don't have a phone plan on them. They're just app devices that we use mainly for like audio books and music and that sort of stuff. And those pretty much stay in the home. And in fact, and my daughter uses it to take pictures when we go places. So, but the question is do we get them a phone? And so far that hasn't been, we haven't said yes on that. And my kids are not nature deprived. I mean, in fact, they're outdoors more than most kids partly because they're homeschooled and they're up in a tree or they're sitting in a hammock in the backyard reading a book, or like yesterday, they went on a field trip to a nature preserve. I mean, they're outdoorsy types. But the question that, and when I was a kid and when we were all of us were kids, when we were out, we need to make a phone call. There were payphones. There are no payphones anymore. Right. So that's an issue. And I like the idea, like we mentioned that Pat, about the pagers, because there was still a need to get in touch with kids, because otherwise they don't have the freedom that we want them to have to just go do things, and then I can be in touch with you and get you back when I need you. If we didn't have that, we'd be, dragging them back on a constant basis, looking for.
Are you okay? Are you okay?
Yeah, exactly. Where are you? You're not here. Sort of thing. And we got to go to this thing, or you got an appointment. So there is that. But one of the things that came up out of this article for me was it was less about convenience and safety, that the friction that this mom was encountering from other parents, like, well, you don't give your kids a phone. It was less about convenience and safety, and it was more about socialization. People were concerned that their kids would not be properly socialized if they couldn't Snapchat and Instagram and text message with their friends. And I just, for example, it says here, in the article, how today's teenagers spend their time is immensely different from how every preceding generation of teens back to the baby boomers spent theirs. And all evidence of cause points to the emergence of the smartphone and the birth of social media. Now, as we said before smartphones, there was internet-connected devices, computers, game consoles, before that TV. So, there has been other things there. But when did, as the author of the article says, when did sitting at home isolated by closed doors and earbuds become a social life?
Right. Well, I'm sorry. Social networks are the most misnamed things in the history of humanity.
The antisocial networks.
They are not social. Social media is not social. Facebook is not social. If anything, it's causing more social problems, more division, Facebook and Twitter and Instagram and Snapchat, than it is helping. And so, I mean, I agree again with the
in the societal level. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, yes, you can point to specific people that are using it better than others, but by and large, it's causing so many problems. It really is not a social thing, because social is ultimately face to face.
Right.
Literally, you are looking someone in the eye, not over a phone. And what my recommendation, if a parent here in my parish came to me and said, should I give my kid a smartphone? I would say no. I would say, start with, like I said, a flip phone, a basic cell phone, something where they can make calls, they can text, they can take pictures with it, but there's no Facebook, there's no Twitter, there's no internet, there's no surfing. It's just a phone. When they show responsibility with that and they understand the good and the bad of the social media, then you can discuss upgrading to something. Right. But these people who they're 8 years old and they're throwing a kid a low-end iPhone, that's a problem. That's a real problem.
Yeah, it's not 14 years old that the kids are getting phones. They're getting phones at 8 years old, 9 years old. I have a friend who her daughter just started high school, and she's never given her a smartphone. Just has never needed to. And the pressure is coming from the school itself. Teachers saying to the students, okay, now take out your phone and look up on Google X, whatever. And I'm thinking,
right.
And she's perplexed because what does my daughter do? She doesn't have a phone. You're putting her behind. And the school already has rules in place where the kids aren't supposed to be using their personal devices in class. They're supposed to they have these, shoe organizers on the back of the door that they're supposed to put their phones in that they'd never go into. You know what I mean? It's like they're violating their own policies and putting pressure on families that their kids are supposed to have these phones. Well, of course you have a phone, and it becomes that more yet another thing where we have to be countercultural because we disagree with this trend.
Mm-hmm.
So it's really tricky. There's the article mentions this wait until 8th movement, which is a movement of parents of kids who that started at this one school to band together to pledge not to give their children smartphones until at least 8th grade. I mean, 8th grade, that's the courage point, I guess, is to hold out till 8th grade now. It's just it's astonishing to me. One of the things I read recently was about the pressures that are on girls using Instagram, and the social pressures around not just posting pictures, but their requirement in their social circles to like and comment on in certain ways within a certain amount of time of a picture being posted, no matter what time of day. Right. And like, I think we talked about this actually in an earlier episode of Secrets of Tech about a girl that was staying awake all night in fear that she would miss one of these posts and wouldn't comment in time. I mean, it's just astonishing. I think so. Maybe that's what parents need to do: is they need to banding together with other like-minded parents.
And to be clear, obviously this is Secrets of Tech. We're not against this technology,
right?
I mean, I obviously railed on social media, but by and large, we all have smartphones. All three of us here have smartphones sitting in front of us right now,
right?
And we also have learned how to use the technology. I hope we've learned how to use the technology responsibly. A lot of kids, even into high school, haven't learned that. I'm glad I didn't have a smartphone when I was a kid.
Right.
I would have not talked to anybody. I would just sat in a corner somewhere and played with that stupid smartphone all day.
It would have been very easy to just sit there and veg out, and or frankly to sneak it during class, and the kids are clever enough. Yeah.
I was the kid where I would sit and play on my Commodore 64 or my NES or Super NES until Mom literally said, "You turn that thing off and go outside." Yeah. My mom said that on a daily basis during the summer.
I remember my mom kicking me out the door and saying, "Do not pass this door again until I call you for lunch or supper." Or
ours was until the streetlights turn on, which of course in Montana and North Dakota, that's very late at the night during summer. Go outside and play.
Yes, exactly. So all right. So if listeners have any comment on this or anything they want to weigh in on with this topic, we'd love to hear from you. What do you do in your family? And if you've made a different choice, if you've given a phone to your younger children, I'd love to hear what you think about it and your reasoning. Everybody's going to do what's right for them, and so I'd love to find out why your choice was different. It's just it would be interesting to hear that. So I'd love to hear from folks like that. All right, so let's move on to our second segment today. This was an interesting one. This came in from a listener James sent in this link, and it's an article that originates at ZDNet. Called "A Microsoft Salesman Gave Me a Clever Reason to Dump My iPhone." And as I read it, I thought, this is more than just about a clever salesman. This is a guy who is a true believer. So let me just tell a little bit about this. So this ZDNet journalist who uses an iPhone was in his mall and saw a Microsoft store and saw they were pushing Samsung phones. They said, and there was a sign that said, if you trade in your iPhone, if you give them their iPhone, they will give you up to $650 in exchange for it, for a Samsung Galaxy Note 10. And so the guy's like, why are you? How can you afford this? Why is Microsoft doing this? And so the salesman was so such like I said, a true believer. I'm trying to think of some of the ways that he's it's described as fervent enthusiasm. He says the guy showed him the Surface Pro 6s, and he was showing them, and he said things like, well, there are things you can do that you can't do on your iPhone, and you can have Outlook and Word and Excel and OneDrive. By the way, you can do all those things on your iPhone. And
it would change your life, I think he said.
yes, it would change your life to switch to the Microsoft Surface and the Samsung Galaxy. I think partly it's Samsung Galaxy because Microsoft doesn't make a phone anymore.
Right.
He says, 6 months ago, I knew nothing about computers and nothing about phones, and now I'm teaching 6, 7, and 8-year-olds how to run a business on these things. To which the reporter asks, do we really want kids running businesses?
Sure.
Yeah, right. I mean, I'm not sure that's the selling point. With an iPhone, you get 5 gigs. With a Note, you get a terabyte, which I think he's comparing apples and oranges. Or maybe it is with a Note, you get a terabyte of space in the cloud.
No, actually, I think
Samsung is part of the Google Drive thing where you get a terabyte of storage on Google Drive.
But more than that, they have a 512 gigabyte phone, and when you could put another 512 gigabyte SIM in there, and that's where the terabyte comes in.
So he's comparing the on-phone storage with cloud storage.
But even at that, he's wrong, because you can have a 512 gigabyte phone.
Right, exactly.
Actually, as I'm thinking about this more, I might be wrong on the Google Drive. I bet you it's with Microsoft Office 365.
Yeah, you get a terabyte there.
I bet you get the terabyte of storage with Office 365 if you get. This is going to be part of the package with the Note.
But you have to you have to pay for that.
For Office.
I haven't looked at the details. But it might be one of these things where, like, the first year you get.
No, it's you get a terabyte free when you get the subscription. If you have a free Microsoft account, you get a 5 gig. Storage, just like you do with Apple storage.
But maybe Microsoft is giving a year of Office for free?
No.
They're not? Okay.
No, because I do this all the time.
Okay, all right.
Students can get a reduced copy, and you can use Office in the cloud at no charge, but you can't, you have to use the OneDrive in order to save documents. You can't put it back down on your computer.
Yeah, what fascinated me about this article was how the salesman, his name was Oscar, was so evangelical. This is the sort of thing you'd expect someone who wants to share their faith with you. They want to share their love of Jesus and what Jesus has done for their life. He's sharing his love of Microsoft and what Microsoft has done for his life, and it's a fascinating look at how. I mean, I don't know what Oscar's faith life is like. I mean, it doesn't come up at all here. But it's interesting how we can become evangelical about certain things in our life and become a true believer. And in our society, as fewer and fewer people are evangelical and passionate about faith, religion, I think we're going to see more and more people become passionate and evangelical about other stuff that takes its place. And tech is one of those things. And unfortunately, just like in religion, when you have people of differing beliefs clashing, you have violent rhetoric, perhaps. Sometimes you see that between people who I'm a Android guy, I'm an iPhone guy. Let's fight about it online.
Or Mac and Windows. That's been a big thing for a long time.
Yeah, or people just made different choices in their technology, and it suddenly becomes a value argument, like this is superior from a moral standpoint. I just thought it was an interesting article. I mean, I don't know if you guys had any comment on that aspect of it.
Well, I mean, obviously the evangelical zeal, as you mentioned, is quite interesting in this, and to be fair, that means he's a good salesman, right? I mean, he's doing his job, and he's doing his job really, really well. But I also think it's interesting from the standpoint of Microsoft and Samsung that they're working together. They realize if they're going to overcome Apple in their different spheres,
right,
they've got to work together.
Yes.
Well, and the other thing that struck me was, the story of the lonely Maytag repairman. I have heard a lot of people say, when they go to the Apple store, it's really, really, really crowded. And they walk into the Microsoft store, which is about up 2 blocks in our shopping center. They're 2 blocks apart, and there might be one person in the Microsoft store. So I was just thinking that they're looking for anything to get people to come in. And they just recently sent me an email saying, hey, you could bring your computer in for a free checkup. I think they're desperate.
Hey, what are you doing this weekend? You busy?
Yeah, exactly.
Have a drink. We're gonna have some coffee here. Interesting. Very, very. So I just thought that was an interesting little story. And we'll have links to these in the show notes, of course. And thank you to listener James for sending that in. It was very good. So a few more headlines, quicker things. Maybe there was a headline. Again, I think Thomas Sanherho, one of our panelists, shared this with me and brought this in here. There's a podcast called Talk Python to Me, and it's called Python Conversations for Passionate Developers. There's that passionate aspect again. But this particular episode that they recently had features a Dominican friar, Cornels van Liet, who is a scholar of medieval Islamic philosophy at Utrecht University in the Netherlands. Utrecht. We have a friend who lives in the Archdiocese of Utrecht, Father Roderick, and he's using Python to how do you describe it? To analyze the ancient Islamic texts. So he's bringing. Let's see. Well, it doesn't say exactly what he's doing. You'll have to listen to that podcast to get the details. But I just thought it was a fascinating, way to see that people of faith using these technology tools to do some of these amazing studies in the humanities, not even just in science and engineering, but in the humanities as well. So it's a fascinating little story there.
Yeah, absolutely.
Then there's another story, just something to be aware of, that there's been reports that HP printers are sending a ton of data analytics back home. But Pat, that might not be something we should worry about, right?
Right, because really as far as my understanding is, HP has what they call an instant ink thing. And so in order to find out how much you're using paper and ink during the time so that they can send it to you in time, they gather things like the number of pages you print and things like that. And there's a lot of software that has to, in order to be able to make sure that the next release is taking care of bugs, there's a lot of analytics that are looking for things like trouble indicators or volume scaling problems. And I think people get really paranoid about that type of thing.
Right. And there's also, they have a HP in the cloud print service
yes,
as well?
Yes, that's true. You can say, you can designate your printer to have a special email address that's generated for you. And then if I'm here, I could send a job to my printer at home if I were using that cloud connected service. But that's one more of those things that internet connected things I'm not always fond of the security involved with those.
Right.
But it's a legitimate thing. If I'm out traveling and I want to have something printed at my home office, that's a legitimate thing.
Yeah, I think sometimes people get real concerned about these. My printer is sending information back to HP, and but in order to get the service that you're buying, it has to do these things. You have to let it communicate. So so it says it's setting information about the documents you print, including timestamps, number of pages, and the application doing the printing. But HP says they don't look at the contents of the documents, which makes sense. Right. So they're collecting some analytics, probably to help them make better printers, to be better about the ink being used and that sort of stuff.
Well, and again, to send ink so that it's there in time when they run out of ink. That's what that instant ink program does.
Right. It's supposed to automatically send you more ink as soon as you need it. So,
and I wouldn't mind having that. I mean, I've got a HP color printer that I print out the cover of our bulletins on, and it goes through each toner cartridge about once a month. 4 cartridges. And be nice is as soon as I replace one cartridge, it would, immediately send the order in. That being said, it's also 11 years old, and so it doesn't. You don't want. I'm happy. At least it's a network printer, but it doesn't have call home to mama.
Right, right. I actually have one of those new HP printers with instant ink. I've only just got it, so I'll be curious to see how it works over time. We don't print a ton of stuff here, but to see how it works over time, so how quickly it sends the ink and how quickly the ink runs out in the cartridges.
Yeah, the awkward thing about that is you have to estimate what your cost of how many pages you're going to use per month.
No,
it
just does it based on just when you run out, it sends a new one.
Well, because the plans that I've helped people sign up for within the last month have all said, do you print 10 pages a month, 50 pages a month, 100, and you pay on a monthly basis for that much. But if you go over, then they charge you an overage charge, kind of like a data charge. And that's what I don't really like.
Yeah.
That uncertainty of that. Now, if they've got a new plan.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So it must be a slightly different version of it. So
oh, good.
It'll be important to keep an eye on exactly what you're signing up for. That's the trick, is they sometimes have various options, and some of them may or may not be as good for you as the other ones. And then the other big news this week was, again, September is the time when everyone rolls out their hardware in time for Christmas. Amazon, which is famously, I think they hold their cards closer to the vest than Apple does. Like, there were no rumors about this stuff as far as I'd seen. They announced their new devices. They're all these gadgets, a bunch of Echo devices. Now, let me just say up front, I'm not sure I want Alexa everywhere. Like, I don't know why I would need some of these things. Like, I don't necessarily need it in every room. And so let me tell you what they've got. We have the Echo Loop Ring. That's right, a ring with Echo on it. So you
can... one ring to bind them all. Oh, wait.
Yes.
Ooh.
I know. I'm a little worried about it. They did buy, they are making the new Middle Earth series, so they might have gotten a little into that. But yeah, I mean, you're supposed to like whisper to your ring and have it turn on the lights. I'm not sure why. Like, what is it for? This says you pair it with your Android phone. Doesn't work with Apple, and it can vibrate to receive notifications, but I still have to pull out my phone.
It looks like with this, and then the other device you're talking about, we're going to talk about the frames. Yes, They're bringing out glasses frames with Amazon Echo.
Yes, that's the other one.
They're trying to move in on the Google Assistant market now.
Yes,
they've got a good chunk of the home market. Now they're trying to get the Google Assistant where I can pick up my phone anywhere. I can be sitting in my car with Bluetooth and Google, do this.
Right.
And it will answer. You can't do that with Alexa right now.
That's true. Right. Well, I mean, you can't do it on your phone, but you could do it with the Alexa in your home, wherever there's an Echo speaker somewhere.
But if you're in rush hour traffic, and your assistant is going to be Siri or Google.
Right. Yes, it is.
Or you could have the app, but then that's one more step to put it on.
Yeah. Siri, open Alexa.
Yeah, exactly.
Crash.
Yes. Crash. But there's actually already an Echo Auto, so you can already get one in your car. It would be interesting. The Ring would be interesting if it had an NFC in it, so you could say put your rapid transit pass on it.
Oh, there you go.
And you could just or pay for stuff with it, and you could do Wonder Twin powers activate as you pay for stuff. That would be awesome. And people would know you're old. But so there's the Ring, there's the glasses, the Echo frames that we mentioned, and it's
right.
They're frames. You have to get the prescription separately. Amazon won't do your prescriptions for you. You got to take it to an optician.
And these aren't like the Google Glass, where it had
the
little thing that sat in front of your eye where you could read it. It just was all audio.
Right.
This is just
there's no AR component to it, which seems to be lacking. That seems to be. I mean, if you're gonna put these chunky things on your glasses and you have to do everything by listening to it. And it's going to be this little. There's not headphones. This is a little speaker that speaks right next to your head,
just right over your ears. Yeah,
it would be creepy. A little ASMR from Alexa. I'm right behind you. Ah,
yeah.
So there's that. This one looked interesting. The Echo Studio. So basically, what they're doing now. This is a Echo speaker like we've had, but it's tuned for sounding really good, like the HomePod. It's basically a HomePod competitor. So it's Alexa in a HomePod, and then they have the new Echo Show, which is slightly bigger. But the big news there is it's $129. It's $100 less. So they're really making these more affordable. And there's like half a dozen other Echoes that they came out with. One with a clock on it, one that just plugs into an outlet. Just like Echo, Alexa will be everywhere.
They did have a Alexa microwave at one point too, didn't they?
Last year they introduced the Alexa microwave. This year it was the Alexa
coffee pot
oven. Was oven. So you could tell Alexa to nuke my coffee, I guess.
Yeah. I was going to say, if Keurig happens to be listening, Google and Alexa can coordination with Keurigs would be a good thing.
Alexa, make me some coffee.
Exactly.
That's sexist. You have to change it to a guy's voice. Sorry. Sorry. I'll have to edit that out.
Alex.
Yeah, Alex. Alex, make me some coffee. But actually, I already have that. Lucy's my youngest. Lucy, make Daddy some coffee. That works.
Yeah, some of us don't have that privilege.
Yes.
So
the privilege of fatherhood. All right. So very interesting to see all these Echo devices coming from Amazon. Not much other than Echo stuff. There's not much in the way of Fire TV or stuff like that. There were some Ring cameras, some new Ring stuff. They have a new cheaper Eero mesh system, a little less capable. They've taken a bit of the power out of it and packaged it so it's cheaper, which is interesting. So very, very interesting in time for the holidays. That's the Christmas shopping is really how they time things. So it'll be interesting to see. I'm not sure any of these really grab me, except maybe the show. I like the idea of a screen that I can pull up, like say when the Ring doorbell rings, it automatically will pull up the camera on that. I like that idea because on the phone it comes up very slowly. So, all right. So let's move on then to our picks of the week. I guess that we've come to that point of the show. Father Corey, what's your pick of the week?
So my pick is it's actually a program that's been around for quite a while, quite a few years, but they've just added something really interesting for those of us who are Catholic geeks. Duolingo, the language app, has added Latin studies. You can now study Latin, which they haven't had for a very long time. It's only within the last month or so they brought it out. And it's really nice because if you've used Duolingo, you know that it does a good job of stepping you through the language. When you study Latin in a lot of schools, they'll sit there and you have to do the declensions and all this stuff and do the charts of them, single, first person singular, second person singular, third person singular, all the way down the list, the whole works. And you get so caught up in these declensions, everything else kind of gets lost. Well, Duolingo doesn't deal with that. They just start you right into the language.
Right.
And it's as simple as, I am a man. Ego sum vir.
Yep.
That's where you start.
Yep.
And things like that. Well, so they brought out the Latin. Now, the only caveat I would have with it's a great study. I've been working on it kind of a little bit at a time. The only caveat I have with it is they do not have the option for ecclesial Latin.
Right. It's classical Latin, right? It's
classic Latin pronunciation. So instead of vir for man, it's weir.
Oh.
Which always seems weird to me. But I like to think of Monty Python. I like to think of Monty Python and Pontius Pilate and Life of Brian with his lisp. But anyways, it's just. But other than that, if you can get past that, it's really nice because it helps you in listening to it'll read something and you got to translate whatever it says into English or repeat type in what it said. And it's really nice for developing that listening, developing the vocabulary, picking up the words, and it does nice and slow. And like I said, it starts out with just, I am a man into, greetings, and then it goes on to plurals and on. Just as you go along, you get deeper and deeper into the language. So definitely if you're interested in studying Latin, getting a little more comfortable with the language, this is definitely a good resource to do it. And oh, by the way, if you don't want to pay for it, it's free completely.
That's good. The benefit of Latin is aside from it, people go, oh, why, do I want to read Cicero? But aside from reading ancient Latin authors, Latin is the basis for most of our modern European languages. And so if you want to study those languages or even be better at English, knowing your Latin roots to words is very helpful.
Well, and then of course there's the obvious, if you want to go to a Latin mass.
Yes. Again, it'll be a little different, but
not necessary that Latin, go to Latin mass, but it definitely helps.
Right. And if Latin's not your thing, you can learn Klingon. They have Klingon, so.
Yes, they do. Yeah.
All right, Pat, what's your pick of the week?
Well, I thought I would be different and do a Windows pick of the week. I have purchased a book called The Windows 10 Field Guide some time ago. Actually, I purchased the Windows 8 one way back when. A man named Paul Thurrott is the author, and he's very, very, very high in the Windows knowledgeable people.
Extremely. He's on the Windows show on
Windows
Twitch.
Weekly.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and I've listened to that for years. Anyway, so he came out with a Windows 10 Field Guide, and it's a very well written book, and you can pick it up as a lay person as opposed to a tech person, and be able to find things pretty well. But for the tech, he really drills down quite deeply into a lot of the innards of Windows 10. And the nice thing about it is, if you buy it, it comes to you as a PDF. And he sends updates every time there's a new update to here's a new release of Windows. He updates that and you get it free. So I can just import it into my Kindle or into Apple Books. And so I've always got my Windows 10 guide with me when I go to help clients with a problem or I'm researching something.
Nice. And inexpensive at $10.
Yeah, it's very inexpensive. And as I say, the fact that he keeps it updated all the time is a real grace.
That's good.
Nice.
Excellent. Well, this apparently is the episode for Field Guide picks, because mine is the Shortcuts Field Guide from Max Sparky. David Sparks has a longtime podcaster, but he's also been made a lot of guides, a lot of video screencast guides for software, Keyboard Maestro, OmniFocus, Hazel, some great Mac software. But the latest is this Shortcuts Field Guide. Shortcuts is an app that comes on iOS, and it's an automation app. It lets you automate all kinds of things, and I use Shortcuts every day for running the StarQuest network. If I didn't have all automation, I would never be able to do all the stuff I need to do. But the Shortcuts Field Guide, it's something like 100 some odd hours of, it's like 130 hours of content, some crazy thing, or at least 130 hours that he's put into it. But it's hours and hours and hours of content, from the very basics, introduction to shortcuts, to advanced concepts for shortcuts, and then he gives tons of examples, which is great. I love that because it gives me ideas of things to do. And it's about, let's see, 2, 3, 4, it's about 8 hours total. The 130 was how much time he put into it, I think he was saying, but it's like 8 hours total video content. But it's really a great course in learning how to use this tool, which will make your iPhone or your iPad 100 times more useful for you. And like I said, I use it every day. So and it's inexpensive. It's like $20 some odd for the course, and then once you have it, you always have it. And he's very good at updating things as new versions of the software come out. So that's my pick of the week, Shortcuts Field Guide. All right, so before we finish, I'd like to take a moment to thank our patrons who make it possible for us to create Secrets of Technology, including Eric B., Mary N., Jason M., Tim C., and Declan M. Their generous donations at sqpn.com/give make it possible for us to continue the Secrets of Technology and all the shows at StarQuest. You can join them by visiting sqpn.com/give. So that's it from us. What do you think of our discussion? You can let us know by visiting sqpn.com/technology or the SQPN Facebook page at facebook.com/StarQuestMedia, and leave us some feedback. You can also send us an email to technology@sqpn.com, and I'll put all the relevant links from our show on our show notes at sqpn.com. Be sure, if you're listening to this from a file that someone has sent you, or if you're listening on our website, make sure to subscribe to the podcast in Apple Podcasts, Google Play, Stitcher, TuneIn, Spotify, iHeartRadio, pretty much anywhere you can get a podcast, you can listen. And you can also listen on our YouTube channel. Just look for SQPN's YouTube channel and subscribe there and hit the bell to get notifications. So, until next time, Father Corey Stika, thank you for joining me and sharing the Secrets of Technology.
Glad to be here, and thank you, Dom.
And Pat Scott, thank you as well.
It's fun as usual.
And once again, I'm Dom Bettinelli. Thank you for listening to the Secrets of Technology on StarQuest.